As the global headcount for the COVID-19 virus exceeds 300,000 infected individuals, the world is rapidly beginning to reveal the consequences of the virus are far greater than when it first hit the headlines in December. Such is the scale of the outbreak. Conference centers in London are being turned into field hospitals, ice skating rinks in Madrid are being turned into morgues, and most of the world is now on lockdown. I'm Leila Faramarzi and this is The Outbreak. On this week's show, we'll be looking into the notion of self-sustainability during the crisis, as well as looking at what the future holds in a post-corona era. We'll also be considering the terrifying concept of using COVID-19 as a bioterror tool. First up, we look at how a difficult situation is being made worse by US-imposed sanctions right here in Iran.
The origins of the coronavirus came to prominence in the Chinese province of Wuhan and was said to have started due to transmission between foods and humans. Yet, as the crisis deepens across the world, some are stating that the virus was in fact man-made by US laboratories. The notion of the virus coming from a lab has sparked off huge elements of trust issues between nations, none more so than in Iran, where the supreme leader has questioned the US's role in the creation of the virus and the intentions behind the offer to help Iran. The leader's comments may come as a surprise, but there's clearly a logic behind the thoughts, as he quite rightly questioned why the US would help, when in fact they are struggling to deal with the crisis themselves, therefore again raising suspicions as to the intentions of the Americans. Yet out of every crisis comes an opportunity. The Islamic Republic of Iran has for decades overcome hardships and sanctions placed on them, and has shown the world that self-sufficiency is obtainable, proving this in the field of defence, manufacturing, and a host of other traits. Therefore, the ability to overcome the COVID-19 outbreak is something that Iran will endeavour to do from within, with Iranian scientists working around the clock to find a vaccine, which will not only create thousands of jobs in the process, but will demonstrate to the world that Iran, yet again, can stand on its own 2 feet. It's also worth pointing out that whilst the world struggles to maintain order and food supplies, here in Iran, in spite of many people self-isolating, the shops remain plentiful and fully stocked. Okay, so here I am in a supermarket in the north of Tehran, and as we can see that in spite of the alleged pandemic, with Iran being one of the worst countries in the world, all our basic necessities are stocked completely well. Also when it comes to all the cleaning equipment, disinfectants and sprays, again everything is in place. So all fruit and vegetable is also abundantly in stock, and here we are with all cold cuts, fruit juices, drinks, everything we need, all stocked up, ready to go, no problems.
Reports in New York from the FBI warning the police to be aware that certain right-wing white supremacist groups are considering using the coronavirus to target Jews, immigrants and even police officers has caused concern that the virus could be used as a biological weapon. With the concept of this happening, with the intelligence now in the hands of the US authorities, what is being done to confront this piece of shocking news? Joining me in the studio is Ramiro Funes, a political commentator and anti-imperialist activist from Los Angeles. Many thanks for being with us today. First of all, the leaked report shows that intelligence was collected by law agencies. Yet if action is not taken to stop this horrific act, does this mean the US is endorsing the actions of white supremacists?
The United States government, for hundreds of years now, has supported racist right-wing groups that support eugenics, that support the elimination of what they consider to be inferior species. We have to remember that the eugenics movement, which is this idea that there are superior races, that we should weed out races that are inferior to white people in the United States. It didn't begin in Nazi Germany. It began in the United States in the early 1900s with the eugenics movement. And actually, Adolf Hitler got inspiration for his horrible atrocities from the United States. And the eugenics movement in the United States was not only allowed to act on its own will, but also key members of the US government were involved in the eugenics movement.
Thanks for that, Mr. Funes. Now, next question. The U.S. also has a very clear social divide between rich and poor, with poorer black communities cramped up into small spaces. Now, is this then why the tactic is being considered, and could this be considered a crime against humanity and even terrorism?
Every day of every year in the United States, there are crimes of humanities committed against communities of color. For example, in New York City, you have the county of the Bronx, which is a heavily Black and Latino population. It also has some of the highest asthma rates in the country because freeways where cars pass through were built there, and there's a lot of pollution. You have the case of Flint, Michigan, where lead was discovered in public water. And in Los Angeles, you have Black and brown communities that are being forced out of their homes, that live in toxic environments. And right now, as we speak, there is a wiping out of communities of color across the United States that is going on, that is very subtle. And it takes the form of the foods that we eat, the foods that we're allowed to consume, because most fast food that's produced, McDonald's, Burger King in the United States, is targeted toward communities of color, which leads to obesity and other health problems. You have the fact that communities of color experience more pollution, they experience more environmental decay, they experience more police brutality. And so the genocide of Black and brown communities in the United States has already been happening, and it's been happening very slowly. And I definitely consider this a crime against humanity that is not being spoken about anywhere.
Thanks so much for joining us here today, Ramiro Funes. What does the future then hold in a post-corona era, in particular on a political level? Are we going to see a leaning towards nationalism and a me-first school of thought?
The horrific idea that certain right-wing groups in the US are contemplating using the coronavirus as a bioweapon against ethnic minorities is truly a shocking piece of news. Yet, as we're seeing the spreading of hate crime across the world, with attacks taking place on a regular basis, as certain ethnic minorities are being blamed and targeted by others for the virus. A young man from Singapore was attacked in central London by a group who stated that they did not want your coronavirus here in Britain, leaving the victim with a broken eye socket following the attack. So does this behaviour then raise the notion that many people are turning to nationalism, using the coronavirus as a blame game, easily targeting those who appear to be from certain backgrounds? Europe is especially known for its far-right attitudes, and the fact that the right has been steadily on the rise in Europe now for just over 2 decades, the future of an open society and multicultural Europe could be a thing of the past in a post-corona era. Already, the Europeans are on high alert due to the virus, closing external borders of the EU, and this may very well suit the EU, who are also concerned about the increase of migrant traffic on the Turkey-Greece border. The Europeans have never really needed an excuse to incite hatred, with history showing that discrimination has been a stable part of European history since the dawn of time, from the slave trade to the Holocaust. Therefore, it's no hidden secret that the coronavirus, to all states and individuals that lean to the right, is yet another catalyst to create a code of alienation with the them and us rhetoric still deep in the hearts of the haters.
The reaction to the claims that white supremacists could be using COVID-19 as a bioterrorism tool has certainly sparked some reaction across the World Wide Web of social media. Let's have a look at what you had to say about it. First up is LJ Montello, who's tweeted she thinks white supremacists should be treated as terrorists for their ideology in using COVID-19 as a weapon against migrants and ethnic minorities. Next up is Keaton Joe, who's tweeted a picture of Donald Trump's notes, showing that he's crossed out the word corona and replaced it with Chinese, essentially showing the world that it's okay to discriminate. This has been backed up by Anya Marie Dobson, who's also angry at the fact that Trump is using this to bolster his support amongst the white supremacist supporters. And finally, one Twitter user has also stated that violent attacks are also on the rise due to the coronavirus, with this tweet showing the aftermath of an attack on an Asian victim, claiming that Trump's white supremacist views give carte blanche to racist attacks. Prior to the virus, the world was almost labeled as the global village due to the positive consequences of globalization. However, is this all going to change once the virus has been eradicated?
Whereas we've discussed the element of hatred and lack of trust on an individual level, the post-corona period could also see a similar concept on a national level. The Schengen Agreement, for example, allows free travel between 26 European countries, with the free movement allowed for both EU citizens and holders of a Schengen-approved visa. Yet in the post-corona era, could we see the notion of Fortress Europe become even stronger, and could the agreement in place be scrapped, not only by their supranational EU powers-to-be, but also by the exit strategy as seen in Brexit, as member states scramble to leave the EU in order to protect their own national interests first. Furthermore, on a wider scale, the US-Canada border was normally a pain-free experience, yet today the strict rules over the COVID-19 virus have led to longer queues and tests. The US is no stranger to implementing strict border controls, with the southern border policy being a staple of the Trump government. He also used the northern border in Canada to implement targeted stops on Iranians entering the US. Whereas it's been evidently clear that the virus itself knows no borders, this is the very concept that will place fear into the hearts of many nations that will use this excuse to learn from the experience, and hence implement the secretly desired hidden policy agendas of protecting their borders from those that they do not want, of those that they deem undesirable, and all under the pretext of stopping the virus spreading.
The coronavirus is nothing more than a mutated strain of flu that, in theory, with our immune systems, should be something that is tamed down by genetic experience and dealt with. However, the politicization of the virus and the abuse of the virus by a small, twisted minority has made the crisis worse. What will become of open borders, trust and international relations in the future? Only time will tell. From me, Leila Faramazi, and the whole team here on The Outbreak, thanks for watching. In the meantime, look after yourselves and each other.